Okay, we are live. So thank you everybody for joining this Hyperledger meetup today. We are going to be talking about digital assets in a multipolar world. Uh, um, First, I'd like to introduce the new host of the Hyperledger New York City meetup. This is a meetup being hosted by the Hyperledger New York City group. It has recently has a new organizer who has a lot of plans for the group. So if you're interested in hearing about that, I did want to give Jamil Sheikh a chance to speak a little bit about who he is and what his plans are for the group, and then he'll introduce Vipin and we'll kick off the discussion. So thank you. So Jamil, welcome. Thank you for attending today.
Sure. Thank you for having me here. First of all, thank you to the Linux Foundation, Hyperledger Foundation, for giving me the opportunity to run the Hyperledger NYC community. Some of you may already know me. I run a blockchain NYC community, which I've been running since 2017. And part of my plans are to really bring some of the firepower that we accumulated in the blockchain NYC community into the Hyperledger NYC community. And start to kick off and do some in-person events, maybe this year, but definitely Q1 next year. If you have access to a venue or like to be involved in planning or supporting an event, please reach out to me or David. Our biggest hurdle is that if we do an event, we typically get 80 to 90 people, 100 people. And so we need to find a venue space that's appropriate for that. I think the Hyperledger community is long overdue for an in-person event where we can all just reconnect, catch up on what's happening in the Hyperledger space. Clearly, there's been a lot of developments recently across all of the product lines in the entire portfolio. Lots of interesting new people have come in, lots of interesting new changes, and hopefully I can get everybody in New York City that's interested in Hyperledger to come together and reconnect. So I look forward to doing that. So I'm not really going to take much more time. I want to introduce our speaker. So Vipin, a dear friend of mine, I've known him for several years, one of the brightest minds in the space. Been quite humble about it. I'm really looking forward to his presentation today. And I'm just going to read off his bio. If you don't really know him, he's somebody you should get to know. Add him on LinkedIn. So Vipin founded dlt.nyc, a consulting practice at the intersection of DLT, financial markets, technology, standardization, tokenization, and regulation. Vipin is a Forbes contributor on the topic of digital assets. I read his articles religiously. I urge you to check out his articles. He writes fairly extensively. Vipin's expertise includes technology and building capacity through technology to enable policy and governance implementation. Vipin is active in the Hyperledger as chair of the Financial Markets SIG, that is a special interest group, and the Identity Working Group. And I really look forward to working and partnering with Vipin on some of the SIG stuff he's doing and Hyperledger NYC. Beyond that, Vipin is technical. He's not just on the business side. He understands the business side of the financial markets, but also is a full stack engineer, being in the space, doing development for over 40 years. And is leading different work streams at ITU and Stanford, and has a master's in operation research from the Indian Institute of Technology. So with that, Vipin, I'm going to transfer it over to you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. The show is yours.
Thanks for everybody for joining. And in a minute, I'm going to turn off my video so that you're not distracted. The presentation is the main focus of this, and I hope you can hear me properly. I had some problems with the mic, but I think, if you do have problems, let me know, and I'll try to do what I can. Beautiful. Mr. Khwaja. So without waiting too much, I'm going to turn off my video and I'm going to go right into the presentation. So this is a very aspirational presentation that I came up with because of all the different activities happening in the world all around in terms of digital assets. There has been a lot of interest in digital assets as the community around cryptocurrency and other, basically the crypto world is experiencing some level of problems. And this is also, things are maturing in the world. Can you turn off your mic, Jeff Pribich, please? Because there is an interference. Thank you. Yeah, so, what I'm going to do is, Jamil has already introduced me, but my main focus was on software in the beginning, but now I'm looking at it from a holistic or a systems point of view. And now in this presentation, I go even beyond that into a whole world view. Obviously, this is very ambitious presentation, but I'm only going to come up short because the amount of time, the number of initiatives out there, and everything that's happening in this space. Now, one of the things that I'd like to highlight is the interoperability team in the policy and governance working group in the digital currency global initiative. But remember that all the different teams, all the different functions have to come together to create a solution that is basically going to be public infrastructure, or in this case, a global infrastructure that is going to be implemented in multiple places, but has to come together to create a global market, to create resilience during war, during pandemics, during all kinds of events that are upon us, like climate change. So I know that many people do not believe, in the same degree to any of these things, but these are the realities of the world. We may have to focus on one or the other separately. But anyway, the roadmap is very simple. There's an introduction, there's some things about digital assets, and then the multiple poles, what I call the multiple poles, and then how do you bridge the poles, and then project managing digital assets infrastructure. Well, basically, it's DAM, digital asset management. So project managing in the sense of creating a solution and taking it to the final.
Hey, Vipin.
Yes.
Yes. I think some people have trouble seeing the slides. Could you just confirm that you're sharing them properly?
Some people have trouble, but does anybody see them, or?
I don't see the slides anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not seeing them either.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll try to go back to the sharing.
Yeah, try to share it again, please.
Yes, I'm trying to share again. What about now?
There it is. Yep, look good. Hopefully everybody else can see it.
Sorry about
Love
that, because I think I went into presentation mode. It somehow got cut off.
Yeah, you're good. I think we're good. Love the colors.
Can you? Okay, so colors are very simple. Colors are, I follow the VibGeor, violet, indigo, blue, green. I removed yellow, and I just have orange, and then red for Q&A. So most of the slides will have on top what part it is in. So that's my roadmap with the colors. Digital assets, anything that has value is created, stored, and exchanged digitally. It's a very simple explanation. And obviously, people know that this is not everybody agrees on this. So in the beginning, there was the additional is the concept of ownership and actions that can be taken by the owner and the delegate. So the initial list is kind of lame, meaning they were the what was considered digital assets in the beginning: photos, documents, videos. Mostly it is data or media or various types of email accounts and so on. But as we know, with the rise of cryptocurrency, crypto assets, we have this new list, which include deposit tokens and tokenized real-world assets and tokenized financial assets and central bank digital currencies, of course. I like to show the slide in the beginning of the presentation, usually because this illustrates a fable, a tale from probably from ancient India. It is called the, huh? What's that? I can't. Anyway, you can see the slides, I hope. So this is an ancient story which talks about 5 blind or 6 blind men from birth who were asked by a king to look at an elephant and come up with an interpretation. So obviously, each blind person felt a different part of the elephant, and they all came up with different interpretations. So that is, one says the elephant is like a hose, the elephant is like a fan, the elephant is like a wall, elephant is like a pillar, and elephant is like a brush. So the reason I bring up this story is because we are, the moral of the story is not that these people do not have sensitive hands, but they only felt a part of the elephant. So it's our job. I mean, in that story, there are 2 variations. One is the elephant is, they come to blows because they say each one has its own perspective, interpretation. The other one is they all sort of talk to each other and come up with a understanding of what an elephant could be like, based on putting their perspectives together. And I think that is a key thing in our business, because everybody comes at it with a certain interpretation, certain perspective. Now, I'm going to go quickly into the size of the digital capital markets. I mean, digital, not digital, but, size of global bonds market. As you can see, there are 4 interpretations of what is the estimated market cap of global bonds, from $129.8 trillion to $305 trillion. These are all based on different interpretations, like the blind men. And the global domestic equities are about $108.23 trillion. And then there's another figure, one of $1.2 trillion. All that is needed to know is that these are tremendously huge numbers. And right now, some of it is digitized, but they are all trapped in silos or within certain islands. And this is the commodities market. And the number below it is the, like $15 trillion is the manufactured goods. Those kind of numbers we are talking about, huge. It's in billions, and it's from 2022. So all of these markets are currently incompletely or very badly digitized. Some people say, we don't need digitized money because commercial bank money is already digitized. But it happens to be trapped inside the bank silo. Well, if you're with Citibank, you are in the Citibank silo, and it's a liability of Citibank. The other one is the, numbers on global wealth. Again, these numbers are huge. Mostly the global debt figure should be interesting to us because it's bonds. Global real estate, which also contribute to bonds. And, these are enormous figures. Cryptocurrencies are only $244 billion, but this was in 2020. So this morning, I looked at the coin market cap, and it's $1.34 trillion. But these are market caps, not necessarily the trading volumes, not necessarily what's happening. So if you take a look at the one specific market, the bond market, which is the largest market, well, you saw that the derivative market is huge, but the bond market is enormous. It has, so it's divided into colors based on where it is, meaning Asia, North America, Europe, rest of the world, Australia, and so on. But I think these are not real numbers because the size of the Indian market, for example, is $1.3 trillion. But I know for a fact that it's much more than that, and it's not visible. So this is another problem in this whole exercise, that there is a lack of visibility into the size of the markets. This is another view of the markets through a window known as the new for trying to figure out how efficient the market is. In the end, there is only one rule, which is the transaction costs. And institutions here are not just regular institutions, but rules of the game, as they say. And so governance is what matters. And it is, the old theory was an endpoint theory, which means that the development stops at markets. But we are seeing structures that are far beyond regular markets, which is why we have this view that with decreasing transaction costs and increasing rule of law, that we will have lesser and lesser transaction costs. The DAOs, for example, are not completely regulated. So this is probably more of a future state in which those automatic market makers, those decentralized exchanges, those program-based trading, and all of that will be regulated, or at least legalized, and then create these efficiencies by decreasing transaction costs and increasing the rule of law. This is the other side of the equation, which is the payments, which are when you trade something, you have to be able to make payments. And this is from McKinsey, and they claim, of course, projecting a trend line, that they are claiming that this will grow up to 38% of banking revenues by 2027. It also, of course, divides the world into Asia, Pacific, North America. So what I'm saying is the payment leg, which this is showing, I think it's going to be, if the payment leg becomes more efficient and less intermediated, then this trend line will be not true in 2027 maybe, but we have to look at what's going to happen 5-10 years in the future. So in order to make digital assets part of, in order to create true digital assets, you need tokenization. Then we talked about payment systems, and linking them are usually programs. And of course, we hear all the different ways in which this can be done, as payment versus payment, DVP, everything atomic. But I think the revolution is going to come when you can make a deferred net settlement payments, because the compression, that is compression in the sense, let's say that if there are two players in the market and they carry on 100 trades, after netting with multiple other participants, that becomes about 2 or 3 trades. So that efficiency has to be realized through some automatic means. There is some work going on in there, but most of the today's digital asset players only talk about DVP and PVP and atomic payments. Credit has to enter the picture, which is what normally happens. That means nobody buys anything with their own cash. So credit has to be expressible on chain as far as possible, so that you can have both the transaction, the payment, and the asset leg on either the same chain or a chain that can be reached through bridges and various other mechanisms. You have seen this many times as the stack of DeFi stack, which again is another way of looking at the architecture of DeFi, another blind man's view of the architecture of DeFi. In all the cases, the base is a blockchain of some sort, but you don't need a blockchain, as we have seen from experiments in the digital asset space, especially in several countries that have adopted some kind of distributed database, maybe with cryptographic backing, but blockchain is not absolutely essential, but something like a blockchain, meaning, can you create ordering? Is it immutable? Is it you know, are the is it visible to everybody? Is it replicable? Can everybody use it as a source of truth? So if you can replicate those qualities in something else, then of course you don't need a blockchain. And on top of that will be the tokens, and on top of that would be smart contracts, and last but not definitely not the uh, not the least link in there is the way to do interact with this whole stack, which would be wallets and APIs. And this is a new look at it, meaning you can have instead of just having those 4 layers, you have an audit and control layer, which we'll come to with various token standards that have been proposed. And you can see that some of this reporting and control being the most important, and reporting also includes at this point some kind of monitoring. So those are important tools to integrate into DeFi if it has to be adopted by regulated exchanges. This is just another view of a inputs and outputs of trade processing, which is how digital assets would be traded using regular trading processes. Orders being translated into trades, backed by reference data, market data. All the main players in the data space, for example, Chainlink is also working with regulated enterprises, not just in the public blockchain space. So slowly, things are turning around from a 1.34 trillion cryptocurrency market to a global market for bonds, 300 and odd trillion dollars. Global market for equities, 280 plus, and various numbers that are multiples of what's happening in the cryptocurrency space. So there is a lot of inefficiencies that have to be worked out in these various digital assets, transformation of the regular instruments to digital assets. This is also a vision of the FMI that is needed to FMI and ancillary systems that are needed. Many of those systems will become more simplified by the addition of digital assets into a global ledger, or a ledger that is spread out among a group of participants. Obviously, this is not going to be a single global ledger for the whole world. It's not going to work. So we are seeing the development of these processes, of these infrastructure in multiple localities, multiple poles, which we go into soon enough. So it has to be possible to do similar things in a real world asset, or a token as a digital representation of a real world asset. Well, in this case, it is not the only way that a token works. Maybe you can say that it's also a digital representation of value that is not linked to a real world asset. But real world assets like houses, like commodities, can also be tokenized. But in this case, you have the pre-issuance, issuance, primary trading, settlement, secondary trading, and expiry, which is reflected, for example, in the ERC-20 standards. Maybe not one-to-one, but it's definitely reflected. So now I turn to the various groupings under which these developments are taking place. The multi-poles, the global banks, global institutions, global conglomerates. When I say global conglomerates, what I mean is big companies like global companies like Apple or IBM or people like that. And private and public blockchains, nation states, and groupings of nation states. Why do I have some of them in bold? Because I'm focusing more on those. First of all, 1 hour is not enough to go through the details of activities happening in all of these different spheres. So I just thought I'd pick a few. And when I say the global banks, they have the current problems on the left, which is the regulatory KYC, Basel II stuff, the reliance on intermediaries, expensive infrastructure, and so on. Citi has, for example, Citi has 1.365 trillion in customer deposits. JP Morgan has this similar, about $1 trillion more. So they both independently came up with this concept of a deposit token. JP Morgan has been working on it for a while. So in this section, I'm going to talk about the actual projects that are happening in these different kind of poles, the global banks. But all of these deposit tokens are essentially trapped inside a single, single bank. For example, the Citi token can only be used within the Citi ecosystem. It can definitely be used for doing FX, meaning I can make a payment from New York to somebody in Tokyo, and in JP Morgan also, which uses, I think, the Onyx system, which is a development from Quorum, and of course, it is a variant of of Ethereum itself. So the aims are to improve KYC, improve transaction costs, and also come up with new products because of the emergent nature of some of these technologies. Of these effects. Global institutions. I am only taking two here, the World Bank, IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Their outstanding bonds are about $257 billion. They issue about 45 to 55 billion per year. IMF is more on the capacity building track, and they are crucial in socializing or kind of trying to advise countries how to manage their monetary system. Usually they have a very vested in, well, I wouldn't say vested, but there is a Washington consensus and market-driven technologies are, market-driven ideas are what drives the IMF. But in terms of the IBRD, which is actually a bank, they can raise money with low fees. They have a very high credit rating, but they do have a reliance on intermediaries, inefficient systems, even though they are sort of quasi-sovereign in the sense their members back their bonds. So currently there is a project which is issuing, I think, about 100 million euros in sustainability bonds for IBRD. It was announced just a week and a half ago. The details were announced, and this is integrated into the financial market infrastructure, Euroclear, settlement systems, which we saw earlier. So any transformation in the digital asset space has to come with changes in the financial market infrastructure. They have to be integrated. The important thing here is to see that they integrate also the DNNs, which are basically a representation of the euro on chain. So you can do DVPs on the Euroclear infrastructure. And Euroclear is building out the infrastructure. Euroclear is a huge financial market infrastructure player. And in the IMF functions, the improving transparency part will come with any kind of a shared ledger with proofs that can be easily gathered. So the nation states, now we turn to the other sort of division, another look at it from a blind man perspective. This is the first one, of course, preserve USD as the sovereign currency of the world, which is a US aim. The other countries in the world want to de-dollarize. They're also trying to create alternatives to SWIFT payment systems, because they have found that with the dollar trade as well as with the payment systems, that certain countries like the US can essentially censor other countries. We are not going to go into the politics of whether that is appropriate or not, but people are obviously want to create their own resilient systems that they cannot be stopped. So it's an ideology and culture-driven situation with some leapfrogging built into the system, and they are also building up non-USD reserves, mostly in gold. Last year was the highest amount of gold bought by the central banks. Then the other question, of course, is whether to create a CBDC or not. Then there are regional and global networks being set up, like Belt and Road, like G20, with India creating a network with Saudi Arabia or with UAE, and with MAS, with Singapore. So all of these last bits, like war, pandemic, and geopolitics, are both splintering as well as converging, forcing the countries to converge. So this is the whole thesis of this presentation, which is that these two forces are simultaneously in play. And the only way to get around this is to have, of course, everybody is going to build their own, but the last bit is all about exactly how to project manage such projects. I cannot go into too much of technical detail in any of these because I would be just spending the whole time on talking about one project. So I go country by country. Only I think only one or two countries I look at, China and India mostly. China is going into a cashless society. They want an alternative to private payment systems. There is reduced cash use. They are a manufacturing powerhouse, but they are facing real problems. Of course, they are central planners, so they can easily say, oh, let's have a CBDC called ECNY. Then there is the Belt and Road Initiative, through which the ECNY can travel abroad through the blockchain service network. So they do have a project to take the ECNY or the blockchain service network outside China into other countries, mostly on the Belt and Road Initiative. But the Belt and Road is interesting because it's not just the old Silk Road, but now it unites countries across continents. But China has also been in problems because of the credit. Credit management is has been a problem for China, and they are working with the IMF to manage that. India, of course, everybody talks about the India Stack, which is a bunch of national infrastructure projects that have been in production for a while. And it includes Aadhaar, the digital identity system. Of course, people complain about the problems with Aadhaar, but it has had a tremendous effect on stopping leakage and paying people directly and collecting taxes at source. So these are all the usual IMF recommendations to be able to be more efficient in collecting taxes and in improving the breadth of your distribution network for benefits. This whole system, the India Stack, is now being exported again, like I said, after the G20 to other countries. And the India Stack includes UPI, the Universal Payment Initiative or infrastructure. I'm not sure, but it also contains other things like wallets and personal wallets for documents that you can use to share. One of the big caveats with that was that India has already got some problems with its well-connected conglomerates that are basically politically boosted big organizations, and the policies that favor certain groups, in the sense that there is a religious component to that. And India is also resource constrained because it imports a huge amount of oil. So natural alliances have formed between Saudi Arabia, Russia, India, and China because of the energy trade. And I think the trade is moving into renminbi or into rubles or Indian rupees, which is a major move if you think about it. And all of these countries have, including Saudi Arabia, have a CBDC project. So what happens when these CBDCs come into the system? Anyway, I have some examples of interoperability in limited areas, like in the Middle East, North Africa region, which is, excuse me, Saudi Arabia and the Central Bank of UAE. Now they have had Chinese enter the picture. In technical terms, they create a CBDC that is outside the currencies, wholesale CBDC called a bear, that is outside the central bank central bank currencies, fiat currencies of Saudi Arabia and UAE. Uses Hyperledger fabric and is got channels for privacy, etc. Added China to the experiment. Mariana is a similar project that was done by BIS with the Banque de France, Monetary Authority of Singapore, and Swiss National Bank. So they all have different currencies, and the FX is implemented as a automatic market maker using principles from DeFi. In FX, the volume is something like $7 trillion a day. This is again more about the project that we talked about the bonds, and this integrates the bond issuance with the CBDC. So they proved that post-trade operations could be conducted on the blockchain with the CBDC. So these are, ways in which we can have token standards, interoperability standards, ISO 20022 for payments, LEI for identity, and the common domain model to manage life cycle of any digital asset. So unless we have some form of these, then it would be difficult for us to have interoperability between these different poles, whether they are nations or nation-state groupings. That's we now talk about token templates, which is basically a way to create a token template using a simple formula, and then from there to functional spec with unifying the views of technical folks, business analysts, and business people. Now the way to get around the blindness is to have a way to talk to each other about the same thing. So the functional spec and the token template are interlinked, and it creates this pathway. This is an example of a formula that is used in TTF. So is it a fungible or non-fungible token? What is the behavior? What are the different behavior groups? And what is the property set? This is a way of assembling certain basic Legos into a full-fledged token that you can define. And we did this with the Ethala project. This, of course, is the um, effort from uh, from Ethereum to come up with a Trex, uh, with the token for regulated exchanges. What does all this mean? I mean, must be ERC20 compatible. It means that you have to implement that interface of minting, burning, and so on. But in ERC20, I think it is not there. So there's a lot of effort to extend the ERC20 token. If you go to Open Zeppelin, you will see that a lot of samples that extend the ERC20 is available. And it needs an on-chain identity system. Any rule or compliance required by the regulator has to be within this token, must have a recovery system. All of these highlighted items are anathema to most Bitcoin maximalists or decentralized maximalists. Now we come to project management of this stuff. There are a few principles here that, these are obviously going to be national or global infrastructure projects in any enterprise. 95% of them are subject to cost overruns of time and money. So the only way to deal with them is to have these principles, meaning think slow, act fast, all these different principles that you actually put into practice during your project. So I'm gonna just focus on a couple, but you get the idea. There has to be a methodology behind implementing huge projects. It cannot be pushed by individuals saying, oh, I want to leave a legacy, I want it done tomorrow, I want it done yesterday, and so on. It is unrealistic. So for the technical folks, this is very important. In a flowchart, you proceed from left to right. But in this case, you have to look at the goal. Why are you doing this project? And ask your users. These are all simple things, but people, it's mostly left to omission. Thinking slow and acting fast. Thinking slow does not mean just planning. It also means building prototypes and testing. For example, the BIS, cross-border payments, Project Bear, all of these are ways in which the prototype is built and tested. Iterate over the different prototypes. This is all, this is taken from a very interesting book that has come out this year, How to Get Big Things Done. We better listen to people like the project managers of big projects if we want these enormous projects to succeed. Some principles here, and then use modular components, usually open source, like I said, Open Zeppelin, patterns and standards, and build small and assemble. This is from adoption is basically a long game. Rapid improvements take place in technology, but to get a product out takes countless experiments, like measurement, and actually trying out things. Failure is basically teaches us. So I hope I have not gone to across all these different areas without turning off your attention. And even if I manage to communicate like 20% of what I set out to do, I will be glad. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
Thanks for all
Jamil,
that,
are you there?
Vipin.
Yeah.
Jamil had to drop, but I'm happy to help, Vipin. So thank you for that. And if people do have questions, feel free to either just type in the Zoom chat, use the raise hand feature, come off mute. Any questions people have, please feel free.
I guess somebody did put something in the chat, but I don't.
Yeah, somebody earlier said would be helpful to speak out the meaning of these acronyms. There are so many. Thanks. Oh, and I see there was a question.
I tried to do that, but it's difficult because the scope is enormous, and hopefully I compressed it enough, and provided a vision about the future, meaning we are going to get more and more digital assets, which are tradable on a financial market infrastructure, and it is going to be interesting to watch the space. Everybody, if you look at the publications from the consultants, McKinsey, reports or resources that we should read to get up to date on macroeconomics and future trends. Usually with BIS, they have a whole bunch of papers. World Bank also has, more than the World Bank, it is the IMF, then the World Economic Forum. These are all, BIS is a Bank of International Settlements, which is known as the central bank of central banks. That's where all the central bankers come together to talk about, not just monetary policy, but actually about what exactly should be done in terms of technical and other implementations. So,
and I don't know, Vipin, if you're seeing the chat, but some other questions have come in. For example, how does XRP fit into this?
Well, XRP was part of the HKEX Hong Kong exchange. I think it was part of a payment rail there. IMF and the other one that I mentioned is the BIS, and also I said something about the IBRD, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And I think we are at time, and you can always ask me questions. I will be sharing my presentation with
if you send me the presentation,
David.
I can email it to everybody.
Yeah.
And if you need to go, that's fine. Although you can have the room for longer if you do want to address any other questions that have come in.
What other questions?
Are you seeing this chat? There's a few that I can read them if it's helpful. What are the reports or resources we should read to get up to date on the macroeconomics and future trends?
Yes, I had mentioned. Hold on a second. Let me just stop my share so that and turn on my. Okay. Yeah, I did mention what you should read to get on. It depends on the depth you want to go to in terms of macroeconomics and future trends. Future trends is always a problem, right? I mean, the only way we can know the future trends is to look at the number of articles being published on a particular topic. There are, somebody has posted some Substack links. I do read Adam Tooze, who's a economic historian who teaches at Columbia, and he's very prominent, and he's also on Substack. But I can't pay $5 for every person, $5 a month for every Substack writer who could be useful. I mean, they all talk about different things. So it seems like the world is splitting into two different systems. Will the BRICS and allied nations not be integrated? I think it's a question of what exactly the context is. In other words, they want, the BRICS and others do want a system where they're not completely censorable, right? In other words, they should be able to trade without geopolitical pressures being put on them. So I don't, on the one hand, yes, they are dividing not just into two, maybe into, 3 or 4 or 5, and depending on the context. But my take is that they all need to come together for certain purposes, and they better think about that before they start breaking away. I mean, before they start saying, "Oh, we don't want anything to do with the other group," that's probably a bad idea. Anything else? This is, of course, the third rail question, whether, everybody would embrace BTC, ETH, or fight them and promote centralized CBDC. Well, the point is that both will exist. There may be some regulation of BTC and ETH, if especially if they want to be traded on public markets, or at least of the companies that stand as intermediaries, like Coinbase, or some exchanges, and they haven't proven to be robust enough to support a global payment system. In fact, Bitcoin, I would say, has strayed from that path and has become a den of hodlers. Satoshi, if he did come back, or if she did come back, then you will see that he or she will see that it has strayed a lot from its initial the initial Bitcoin paper. Any truth in XRP being used as a major currency in the USA here in the near future with the US government? Well, XRP is going to definitely be part of the ecosystem, but major, I don't know. I mean, that's, as long as there is no control of issuance, which is what their biggest problem was with XRP. US is an exception only because I think US, it says many countries are doing the work of setting up a reliable regulatory framework. The US is an exception. Thoughts? Unfortunately, in the U.S., we are used to, let's say, improvisation, because that seems to be the order of the day. There is no, for example, there is no digital identity system. Instead, they use the social security number as a proxy. So that creates so many problems, right? And there is a culture war about CBDCs. Everybody thinks CBDCs is a way to bring in government control. And I see many of these people posting on LinkedIn. Have they looked at what LinkedIn actually does with whatever data they are putting out on LinkedIn? LinkedIn monetizes that data, collects that data, and obviously is going to hold on to it for a very long time. So it's not just the governments that we have to be wary of. Commercial banks, will it make the commercial banks obsolete? Commercial banks are the main source of money in any country, right? Because they are, this question is, do you think US commercial banks are opposing the move to CBDCs because it would make commercial banks obsolete? So without credit creation, which is the proper, role of commercial banks, and commercial banks create 80 to 90% of the money in today's system, I don't see how going to CBDCs will remove commercial banks from the system. Maybe, there will be limits on how much you can hold in how much CBDC you can hold. Otherwise, it would be so easy to have a bank run right into your CBDC wallet. But remember, commercial banks are the credit creators, and they will always be, unless there's another mechanism for creating credit. And I don't see that mechanism coming up in any of these experiments. So I think it's a, abundant information on that project. Come point to one CBDC project. Well, actually there is, but it is Project Hamilton in the US, and it's an open source project. It says, can you point to one CBDC project that will further our understanding of how blockchain technology is used? One where there is abundant information on that project. So Project Hamilton is what I would suggest, but Project Hamilton is hamstrung by the fact that it's in the US, and there doesn't seem to be any CBDC project in play in the US. The other ways in which you can look at it is by looking at projects like Besu, which are open source, which are being used in multiple CBDC projects, and you can see how it is being used in these CBDC projects. I guess that is the last question that was there. So I will try to close this session, and thank you everyone for coming and attending.
Great. Thank you, Vipin. Thanks to everyone. And as we said, I will send the link to the recording and the link to the slides once I get them to everybody who registered. So, and if you have any additional questions, certainly hoping to continue the discussion. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Jamil, who's absent, and you, David, thank you.
Of course, happy to help. Yeah, thanks, everyone.